This meeting is public, which means try to keep a few things in mind, namely no HR issues, no interpersonal issues, no issues related to sort of the private relationships that we have with other partners. And we'll get started right away. So let's get going with that. Let's do Alex first today.
Okay, so not much happening on the chain side. One thing is, actually something is happening. My change of removing NFG is, the spec is out. The spec is being reviewed. I think Bowen and Eugene Kapun already made a couple passes through it. I think mostly it is good to go. Bowen convinced himself we have liveness, and it's most certainly safe. So with the spec being close to being accepted, the code change is also out. I'm not 100% certain yet. It is in a pushable state. I need more tests, but generally it is built, and that's the last outstanding change before we fully feature complete. It was initially just removing NFG, but also then we discovered a couple other issues. So it's a pretty important change to make it through. Other than that, stability push is happening. We are reviewing the changes. We have a couple more tests that landed. I think it's still not. It's not as fast paced as I would hope, but it's happening. So that's the update.
Is there anything we can do?
May I clarify the state of the finalities? Are we going to have only one going forward?
Yes. So at least short term, we're removing the concept. So technically, no. Technically, removing NFG did not remove the concept of Doom-like finality. So still after one, like if there's a block at height h, h-1 has Doom-like finality, right? So one person needs to misbehave for it to be rolled back, and block at height h-2 has full BFT finality, assuming all three blocks are produced. All right, so the criteria is way simpler now without NFG, right? If you have 3 consecutive blocks at consecutive heights, the block at height h-2 is final. H-1 is Doom-like final. However, what did change is that for Doom-like finality, you still need 2/3 of approvals, not one half. So the constant 1/2 is completely removed for now. I think there is a way to introduce it back, but it is not a priority right now. So at least the way we're gonna ship, there's gonna be no. If 1/3 is offline, it's gonna stall. But there's still fast finality.
I think Alex also made the point that we should probably remove Doom-like finality in our documentation, or at least hide it in the sort of beginner documentation, because it might be confusing to people. But I mean, there's an option that they can use, but yeah, it might confuse people.
Yeah. So effectively, the idea is that the fewer new concepts we present to people, the easier, right? So ideally, people should not care at all about finality. We should just say, you send a transaction, you get the result, and that's it. And so it defaults to BFT finality, and there's no way, and there's no exposure. So people who go to the materials for ramping up should not have any insight into the fact that there's a Doom-like finality, or that there's a the head which is not final at all. And then if you're advanced, if you're actually caring, if you want to shave off this half of the latency, then there is actually reference material for you that you can read and understand, that you can actually change the parameter, but it should not be in the intro. I don't know if it is today.
Sounds reasonable to me.
Alex, are there things that we can do or the community can do to test consensus that would help out?
We don't. So the spec goes through through how it works and the safety proofs. So everybody on this call can just go and review it. It's I don't have it open, but it's the latest review in NEP. Other than that, liveness I'm going to put in there maybe this week. Right, so we're going to rewrite the proof, and Bowen says that he has the simpler one, so maybe I will talk to him and see if we want to use this. But so consensus spec is PR57 in NEPS, right? So please go ahead and look at it. It's actually pretty short That's the beauty of Doomslack, is that it's extremely simple. I think that's the biggest advantage of Doomslack over other consensuses.
Are all the patches related to consensus checked in at this point, or are we expecting more?
So there's actually one thing that we might actually as well discuss right now, because why not? So with Doomslack, there's a particular trade-off which we can make, which relates to how we switch epochs. So there's a simple way to switch epoch, where effectively we're saying if the block height passes certain threshold, it's a new epoch. Right? This is what we actually had before we started introducing any finality gadgets or Doomslacks. It almost works. There's one particular scenario in which it will break. Specifically, if there was 2 epochs in a row, such that both epochs had 0 final blocks, then you can have an epoch fork. Effectively, like if the epoch 5 has no final blocks, epoch 6 have no final blocks, then there could be 2 different epoch 7 with 2 different block producer sets, which could independently finalize different blocks. For that to happen, you first of all need 2 epochs in a row without final blocks, and moreover, you actually do need wildly different block producer sets in the epoch after that, which I think is completely impractical to happen. But in theory, we cannot say that we have completely, provable safety, because clearly here's the scenario in which safety doesn't exist. The only alternative we know, which is proposed by Eugene Kapun, is to implement a epoch switch procedure in which on the epoch boundary, until at least one block is final, both the previous and the new block producer set finalize, attest to every block, right? So with that, we convince that we have full safety. So even epoch forks cannot happen unless 1/3 colludes, but it has 2 disadvantages. I guess it has one disadvantage. It needs to be built. Unlike the approach with just looking at the heights, which doesn't need to be built because it just happens to be what we have today, right? So I'm obviously rooting for descoping full safety and using what we have today. But if someone feels strongly against it, now is a good time to speak up.
Well, what's wrong with with not switching epochs until there's a final block?
That is not safe. It just doesn't work.
Wait, what doesn't work?
Like that does not solve the problem. You actually do need both. So it's very easy. Like imagine that this is the length of the epoch, right? 100 blocks, and the final block actually happens to be here. It could be that there was actually also a final block here. You just didn't see the block, which makes it final. And so the new epoch validators can create a final block here, and then they can create a final block here on top of this final block of the previous epoch. And these 2 final blocks don't have anything in them conflicting. So you have, like, it's even worse safety, but it's even easier to create safety violation than if we just switch epoch at the height boundary. So yeah, so there are only two viable options. The ones I described. One to switch at the epoch at the height boundary, and then it's extremely simple. It's already built, but it has this very unlikely but theoretically possible way of having epoch forks, or doing the Kapun method, let's call it, where we actually have both block producer sets attesting to the blocks.
I think with the 2/3 requirement, it's probably fine to go with the current approach, because you cannot even produce a block if you do not have 2/3 approval. So it is more likely that blocks gets finalized and things yeah.
Well, under normal circumstances, there is no way there is no final block, because we have provable liveness. But the thing is that if you require liveness to prove safety, that means that your safety relies on partially synchronous network, right? And so that's something that, in the academics community, that's something people consider to be extremely bad practice, to require to have network assumptions for safety. I take this silence as people having no concerns with the. Or if someone feels like they don't have enough information to make a weighted decision, just reach out to me in Slack, and I can provide more. If there are more than 2 people reaching out, I will just put it in a document.
Right. Slightly different topic, Alex. Since we're now running BetaNet, are you receiving adequate feedback from the testing that we're doing in BetaNet, or are there things that we could be doing to give you better feedback in general, better bug reports or issues in GitHub or anything like that, based on the feedback that, or based on the testing that our community is doing in general and other validators? on
So,
BetaNet?
so unfortunately, last week I was completely consumed by this Doomslack thing. So I completely dropped the ball in following what's happening with BetaNet.
Yeah, so I can provide a summary of what's happening. So yeah, pretty much like a good way to test is to run a node and join BetaNet, and think there was some problem with staking because of the reward and total supply because of how it's set up. I think we just plan to give to switch to a permissioned entry for people who actually want to join. So we have to manually give them enough tokens to stake, and that's sort of an unfortunate trade-off that we have to make. But I think it's probably fine for now. And for people who actually want to stake, just reach out to me, and I'll give enough tokens for you to stake. And also, yeah, it's also will be how we onboard external validators onto BetaNet. And last week, it's other than that, we had some like mess up in the configuration, in the Genesis configuration itself. There is no major issues with BetaNet. So some people reported that that they encountered issues with syncing, but it does not appear to be a universal issue or like reproducible issue. So I mean, we were still looking to those failures or those glitches, but I think mostly it works fine. Yeah, and that's yeah. So we should proceed to onboard external validators this week. I mean, I hope we will get the consensus change in before tomorrow's release, as that it's important to test it out. Yeah, so that's the update.
Oh, you're suggesting to push Doomslack today?
Yeah, I don't know whether it's possible. I mean, you have like Q5. Yeah, I mean, we can still make a. It's fine if we don't make it to the release tomorrow. We can do a manual release.
Yeah.
That's fine.
It's only missing tests, assuming we stick with the current spec, so we can as well push it and then push tests later. Yeah, I don't expect it to go down.
Actually, let's not do that. Let's first test it well before we push it.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I know, right? All right. All right. Any questions for Alex? All right, let's change things up even more. It's Kendall, go next, please.
Sure thing. All right. Yeah, so this week on the wallet and Explorer side. So on the wallet, we have a few things that are in the PR stage. One that should be closed pretty quickly. We're just trying to make it more obvious for users which network they're using, especially as we get closer to mainnet. There's definitely some insinuation that you might be on a mainnet on the wallet right now. So two features that will be pushed for that. One is just like a network banner at the top, nice blue bar that just gives you some visual indication of what network you're on. And then we're also going to be adding subdomains to each of the usernames that are created, which is also more similar to how this will work at mainnet, where we append .near. So for each testnet, whichever testnet you're on, it's going to be appended like the name of the testnet, or the name of the network. So .testnet for testnet, .betanet for betanet, etc. So that's in PR. Then there's also the link drop support, which, yeah, this is sort of the back end of link drop. I think I've discussed it a few times. And then recovery options, things that are in progress. A big one is just like improving error handling. That's like a massive epic. There's a lot of components to that. The most important one is probably just handling RPC timeouts. So that's if like, well, I mean, really if the response to like a transaction confirmation, like a synchronous confirmation times out, we needed like a way to handle this for users and also indicate to them that the transaction still might be confirmed, it just hasn't. So that's like a big thing we're working through, and should be hopefully useful if, you know, we end up having just longer block times than the 1 or 2 seconds we're expecting, which seems more or less likely. And then, yeah, I mean, other things are like handling like unexpected errors, like 500s that we get, and a few like UI, like so front end kind of just like form validation errors. Another thing in progress, adding end-to-end testing, probably using this framework called Cypress. of the critical user journeys. And this is also part of a larger epic as we move to mainnet of just like having, you know, a more like, you know, production ready release process. So another thing we'll be doing is thinking about, you know, when we actually like, instead of right now we have it, so we push master. If you merge to master, it deploys straight to production. We'll probably be rethinking that and having like a more true staging environment and having like more of a serious release process there. Although that's probably as we get closer to mainnet. And then just a heads up on the like sort of definite features left. I mean, those things we just talked about are more about stability. We do still need fungible token support. We'll be adding a display of the locked balances. So particularly state staking, vesting, like, you know, our balances and our investors' balances. And then, I mean, staking as well. If you have like, if you delegated, those balances will be displayed. And then likely, like we have basic ledger support, but we just need a better flow for how that actually interfaces with the wallet. Then on the Explorer side, also, you know, a big push on stability there. That's sort of the main thing. So the two biggest epics left, stability and performance rather. So the steps we've taken there, we broke actions out into their own table, which removed like a big join from querying transactions. So we've done a first round of sort of performance testing there, which is looking good. You know, I think we're up to like around 100,000 transactions that it can handle. So we're trying to test, the next stage of testing is to figure out what the sort of limits are so we can know when we can expect performance issues. We have a PR in progress. We're just adding the contract details to accounts, just working through a few UI issues there. And then on the actual like Explorer sort of front end side, the last big epic there is we're calling like UX paper cuts. So there are like quite a few issues. Basically, we're just trying to improve the experience as opposed to adding new features. There are quite a few things. So this is everything from like small UI tweaks, like just like there's like like changing the footer, for example, like just like some improvements there, and then everything to like, you know, improving the way that we communicate the gas costs and break down the gas costs. Right now it's a little confusing. You know, we have like T-gas, which we don't really explain to the user anywhere. So some improvements to be made there. And then on kind of more like the back end side, one thing we're looking to is improving our network indexer. It's kind of like kludgy right now. A solution we're evaluating is like modifying the Graph, which is a company that makes like a network indexer for Ethereum, like modifying that to support Near. So there'll probably be a lot more to come on that over the next few weeks. And yep, that's main updates for today.
I just want to mention that last week I realized that with our configuration for the mainnet, it is almost certain that for a given transaction it will take maybe at least 4 seconds to complete. So we should, I suggest we consider switching on the development side to use like async transaction submission instead of waiting for the transaction to complete, because you know, I think it's definitely not a good experience if for every transaction you have to wait at least 4 to 5 seconds. I mean, we can discuss how we handle this.
Well, I'm concerned that if we switch to async, lots of stuff is going to be breaking because we do not use async because of the nonsense.
Yeah, that's also a good point. But yeah, I feel like for like, at least for end user, like waiting like 5 seconds to like receive, like send and receive token, it seems a bit suboptimal.
Where is this coming from?
What?
Like, where's this 5 second coming from?
It's because we have too many chunk producers in one shard, because we switched to one shard and there's too many chunk producers, and you often have to wait for their slot to come. And so pretty much you always have to forward the transaction. I mean, unless you get extremely lucky, and then it's the block producer is just like you know, within several blocks of producing their chunk.
So why do chunk producers in the same shard not share transactions with each other?
Well, that would be extremely that would be a lot of network overhead that I think we cannot afford.
Why? I mean,
Yeah.
like forwarding should solve it like optimistically. You just forward for like next few slots.
Yeah, I mean, we always forward, but we don't forward to everyone. Like, if forwarding to everyone is like too expensive. And
Oh,
but you-
Bowen, what Eugene is saying that instead of just sending to the guy who's 3 slots ahead, you send to 1, 2, and 3 slots ahead of you.
yeah,
So
it's
one of
like
them will include.
optimistically.
yeah, I mean, we can do that, but I thought that actually, like, I mean, this still wouldn't give you like 1 second, like, because like it's likely the network would take some time, and like it's almost impossible that exactly the next guy would get it. It's like, yeah, maybe we can send to 2 instead of like 2, 3, and 4, but still, there's definitely like some gap. Like that's like,
That's fine. We like still should try to make it like as efficient as possible. Or, like,
But Bowen, isn't it the case that we still have to wait for 3 seconds until the block becomes final?
Well, yeah, but for like developers, maybe they don't want to. Yeah, but yes, but for end user, yeah, maybe they do need to.
Wait, do we actually wait for finality on the block when we say commit, like broadcast transaction commit?
No, that's just like wait for the transaction to complete. That's not wait for it to be fine.
So
I mean,
we
we
don't wait
could
for
do-
finality.
Tell me if I'm wrong, guys, but this might be a little too low level for this meeting.
No, I think that sort of matches this meeting. If I think the default for anything should be until it's final.
But no, I think for end user, yes, but for developer, they might want to, like, when you're just developing something, you might want to see that, just test things out, and for that probably doesn't matter if if you just want to quickly iterate on things.
Well, then you can configure. If you're sufficiently sophisticated developer, just configure your environment so that while you develop, it explicitly says, I want not final. But if the user sends a transaction and it returns to him success when it just makes it to the block and then the block gets reverted, that's extremely bad.
So
Yes.
what you want to have is for some transaction you don't care whether it's rewarded or not, because it's going to be included in the next block after this, potentially. So what you want is like multi-stage return result on the API level. So you have multiple events happening for the same transaction. So first is like, it gives you like callbacks on progress. So once it's taken by the chunk producer that just gonna forward it, it's one event. Then once it's received by chunk producer and like it's included in a block, it's the next event. And once it's final, it's one more event. And
Well, you never need more than one, right? You always care about one specific. You're either okay with zero conf, which you should never be, but if you are, that's one thing.
You always, like, your UI can depend on how you want to handle it. If it's monitor, it's one thing. It's like one-off event, it's another thing. But
right, but you only care about one of the events. You can specify. It is already a parameter in the API where you say whether it's okay for it to be included in the head, or it has to be in the final block. We can just add one more which says zero conf is also okay.
Okay, now I think we're going a bit too low level.
Okay.
I think that's, but I think on the like app there, we should like, so basically for now, nearly still like configure to use the optimistic result, which is like it doesn't wait for any finality. Which I mean, I think we should consider changing that at least for the end user facing product, we should switch to use BFT finality.
But also RPCs needs to be consistent, right? If you like many of our RPCs return the final result, then the transaction sync should also return the final.
It feels like a large discussion that we should yank into some NAP or something like GitHub issue, because definitely lots of corners to consider.
Yeah, let's create a sync discussion.
All right. Any questions for Kendall? All right, Max, why don't you go next?
Yeah, had some question for Kendall, I forgot. All right, I'm gonna share the screen. All right, what do we do in middleware? Same old stuff. These are the issues assigned to us. Actually, the interesting thing about those issues is that I think like more than half of them are actually about these 3 work items, which is Wasmer error handling, like in the new version. So it kind of ties probably 3 or 4 issues in here. Genesis contracts and transfers that Evgeny is mostly working on. And try hash update, which turned into like lots of refactoring, but I still think we need to finish it. The other things are like minor, and I think we're pretty close to close them, maybe this week even, and just like be left with those things. Wasmer error handling will require engaging with Wasmer, which I haven't done yet. So currently Alexei is working on it. So
one remark. Actually, like they are already working on it, and we're just waiting, I guess, for results for them.
Yeah, well, I also want to make sure they're working on the right thing. Yeah. All right. So we had a sync last Wednesday. This is what people are working on. So I'm gonna go briefly over it. Nikolai, he's ramping up, and he's actually building a voting app using our documentation, which he will also use for like all kind of gas estimation. So he already has something. You can ask him to share it with you if you're interested. And he also got a nice suggestion to add Kotlin as another contract language after the mainnet, which something people are extremely excited. I dropped this idea with Parity and Cosmos during a meeting last week, and people were very excited about it because Kotlin, AssemblyScript, and Rust will basically cover us on all directions. Like Rust will cover backend engineers, AssemblyScript, front end, full stack, and Kotlin, everyone else. People also with Java background, like Android developers, but we can do it after the mainnet. So Alexei is working on this thingy with the Wasmer error handling. Alexei, have you been working on any other thing while you're blocked on discussions here?
Yeah, I merged one pull request from about the board serialization of the transaction outcome, and also made a small pull request for Bosch itself, and I will go to. Actually, that's strange that when I taken a look on the issues and see assigned issues, I can't find some issues which are in the ZenHub. For some reason.
Yeah, we can have some ZenHub drill down later with you. Okay, Evgeny, so what is not mentioned here, one great thing Evgeny is doing, he's actually fixing a bunch of tests that are broken right now, which is also quite unfortunate that we had some hot tests that were not running on the CI. I don't exactly remember how this happened, but basically we stopped running integration tests on our CI at some point, and now a bunch of them are broken, so Evgeny is fixing them.
Yeah, it was due to a Rust version update.
Yikes. Wow.
I also want to mention, so right now Nightly has a bunch of red, and like we should upgrade our Nightly to send us, like spam us with emails when this happens, so we can actually roll back in time.
Yeah,
because I think
there is an issue for that, and I think we just haven't got to that yet.
So many failures happened after renaming near to near D, which was sort of expected. Bo is on top of them.
Yeah, I think.
The point is we should be
different one. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, my point is we should be rolling back the change that makes Nightly red. Because right now otherwise we will roll it out into beta and we'll not see what other stuff that broke.
Well, but the way we roll things into beta is we independently test it, right? We don't just promote whatever current Nightly to beta, right? We have a testing procedure there.
No, that we do the testing procedure is supposed to be Nightly test, but right now it's in a sort of a not fully set up state.
Okay, but it's something that's going to be there in the future, right?
Right.
I mean,
cool.
Yeah.
We should not hesitate though to back these state changes out so that we can do releases. That's I think
I
that's
agree. Cool. Yeah, so the other thing Evgeny is working on is like disabling top-level account registration. So there is a thing that he pushed the change, but disabled it through the config because a bunch of stars started breaking. And we need to fix a bunch of things on the app layer side. And this is actually Kendall and Vlad. You should be aware of this. We need to flip the switch in the config, and we are blocked by the app layer on this, and that would be the blocker for the mainnet. Yeah, so he's still working on storage refactoring, so I understand, right, Evgeny?
Mostly not actually. I'll focus on contracts this week.
Mm-hmm.
Also for app layer, I think I'll need to rerun tests when I switch config back, because CI was not working, so some of the tests might be broken related to the change, so they will need to be addressed. So I'll look to this.
Cool, thank you. So with account hashing, we're gonna just do it as the last thing in our middleware pipeline of things we need to do for the mainnet. So Vlad working on the B58 encoding fix and some documentation, and he's already, I think, looking at other things he can be helping with that are mainnet blockers, right, Vlad? I think so.
Yeah, I already finished that PR with B58 and with docs as well. So I'm finishing a few minor cleanups on the RPC side, and then I will be able to help on other parts.
Yeah, I think there's just like very few issues left that are not part of these 3 mega issues. So like I can look together with Alexei into this more and be like, and have Wasmer and tight loop there. So maybe you can look more into either tri-hash, not account hashing, or yeah, or that would be actually a good one to look into.
Okay.
I mean, since you already reviewed most of the pull requests from Evgeny on that side. So what I've been working with Willem on cross-contract testing. We're like discussing like high-level design. What else is actually we started 2 community groups. So one is for WebAssembly for blockchain. This is going to be, we already had the first call. Parity and Cosmos were in there. Ethereum did not join yet. So
at Oasis, I think they also.
We're gonna loop in people one by one. We're gonna take it very slowly. So the goal of this, we were figuring out what we're actually going to be working on together. And right now our focus is going to be on coming up with a suite of tests that would be the same for all the WebAssembly runtimes and the backends, because all blockchains using kind of different backends and runtimes, but we all want to make sure the same corner cases work for everyone. So this is something everyone is excited about. We're going to work on that. And yeah. And the other thing it would be a metric. So we're going to have a documentation that lists out on y-axis all the runtimes and backends, and on like x-axis all the properties of these runtimes and backends. And we want to fill out this metric. It's also a lot of work. The important like precursor for this meeting to be recurrent is for it to be actually useful. So as soon as, like, if we ever lose need to have a meeting because we can do things asynchronously, we're not gonna have it. That's important to know. So we're not just assembling, you know, like once in 2 weeks just to talk to each other. We actually need something to work on. So the other community group that we are starting is AssemblyScript community group. And also the core of AssemblyScript is very excited about that, that we're gonna have now separate work group, which is what is already being run by Aaron from Fastly, and the AssemblyScript community group. So AssemblyScript community group gonna include companies like Shopify, Fastly, a couple of blockchains, including Parity and Cosmos. And we're gonna basically be discussing those priorities that Bowen has drafted in the past for the language and DevTools. But at the same time, we're gonna be talking on the common libraries that we can work together on, and just like DevX in general. So that's what I was working on. Sorry. And Anton, we didn't have sync this Friday on the bridge. Anton, you here today? Anton? Okay, I'm not sure he's here. Probably he's not. So we didn't have sync last Friday on the Ethereum bridge. So he was supposed to finish fixes of the Ethereum prover and start working on the Light client. That's it from my side. Anyone wants to ask questions?
Just wanted to say awesome work on community groups. Yeah, it'll be really good to have both WebAssembly and AssemblyScript moving forward.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I echo that sentiment. Max, this is great stuff.
Yeah, as a short note on that, I've been talking with the core team about their implementation for virtual tables. Mm-hmm. And so I've already been commenting on their current PR, and it's in progress.
Cool. Well, can you also then update stuff that is outdated here? I'm gonna send it to you later.
So one thing I wanted for us all to kind of come back to is ZenHub's roadmap, just so we kind of look over it and make sure that we are making progress on all the things, as well as that like things still make sense.
I just want to update that I think I put all the chain related triage all the chain related issues and assigned estimate for them and also added to the corresponding epics. So it should be like right now the epic should encompass most of the issues both on the chain and on the runtime side. So
yeah, but when you did great stuff, everyone can actually see the change after Bowen did this. We had this much gap between the unknown, and now we have this much gap, which is pretty good.
That's a great example. Thank you, Bo, and thank you, Max. I mean, that's excellent. It gives us a great insight into where we're going.
Cool. This method we are actually like doing like okay, like in terms of the velocity. At least that's my interpretation.
Yeah, the important thing I think was that we asked people from the very beginning to be biased on overestimating rather than underestimating. I think that's.
I remember the question for Kendall about the wallet. Like, what's our plan for the mainnet and account creation in the wallet? Because it seems like right now it's unclear. So is it discussed somewhere?
Yeah, I guess like I guess there's like two considerations. One is like the top level domain. So the one in the wallet, we're just going to create .near accounts for mainnet. And then as far as like how they're funded, so I mean that was the whole point of implementing Linkdrop, was just to make how they're funded more flexible. So that means that that's the issue's titled third-party account funding. So this will make it possible for apps to like easily fund the accounts of their users. So that'll be one route. Another route will be some kind of what's it called, faucet on our side. That's still a bit unclear as exactly what the implementation will look like. And then a third one, depending on I guess where we fall with like ETH support and the ETH bridge, will be to allow users to purchase near tokens using Ethereum. That's like pretty unspec'd. To be fair, I think like we need more clarity around like the timeline for Ethereum support, but that's why we're like there's an Ethereum support epic, so that'll like that information will be discussed there.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, and like on the business side, there's also like a few other options that are being discussed, which would require some partners.
Right, excellent.
Just, I actually wanted to ask you, like, as Max was scrolling through roadmap, the scheduled releases, there might be, like, it's only 12% done, which I'm assuming there's a lot more. So, so I'm assuming there's, like, either some missing estimations or some more progress should be done. I mean, some more progress should be recorded. So
Yeah, I'll go through those bugs today and see if we can get them updated to make sure that they're all up to date. I mean, we see we're making solid progress. I just suspect that we just haven't updated the issues to show the progress in the roadmap.
all right.
I also have some feedback. I feel like it's super important to do internal testing, and like every time I'm doing something on Friday, I file like 2-3 bugs towards like near SDK Rust, and then this weekend when I tried to like acquire enough tokens to stake on BetaNet, there was like also like a few near shell issues that I need to file. So like the more we test internally, the better it is. I know it's like takes time, but like also we discover like critical pieces that developers gonna face.
Yeah, I'll join this Friday.
Cool.
I think it's a really good point, and Nearshell actually provides us with I think, a unique opportunity to make sure that we can test the features that need to be tested, because Nearshell depends on us, right? It depends on so many other things, and so if we get those tests in there, then it could expose a lot of failures in other places. All right.
Actually, on this note, on this note, should we add Nearshell as part of our nightly tests? Some of the scenarios that we have. Okay.
Absolutely.
I think that's a great idea. Peter, do you want to pick it up from there, since it's Nearshell's in your department too?
Sure. I can't figure out how to turn the video around, so I'll leave it at this one. Yeah, mainly we're focused on the documentation, specifically automating the automating the documentation of the SDK and the API, which looks like going through and commenting all of the public methods, and then making sure CI actually moves those snippets, and then those snippets get into Markdown. Markdown gets pushed into the docs repo. So that's like the primary thing we're all focusing on right now. On top of that is estimating gas usage, which I think already got talked about, so I won't go into detail there. Another piece is the command line tool. So I don't know if you saw it, but you should definitely check out the new login flow. We also fixed a bug for when you're on a VM or you're not going to log into the machine that you're using with the shell. So that should be working now. And things should be working for Windows now. So if you have a Windows machine, fire it up, test things out, tell me if it's still broken, but it should be working. That was a pretty good push. And then the last piece, I've been working with Anais on the contributor flow. So this is not as much engineering, but it will turn into engineering tasks. So we're going to be going through all of the issues on every repo and pretty much identifying ones that are actually good issues for beginners. That might mean we need to change how we actually submit issues, you know, so they're a little easier to consume publicly. I've gotten feedback from people, my friends who are actually really good engineers. If I showed them an issue, I thought that was pretty clear. They were like, actually half the words in here are specific to your guys' project, and I don't think you like recognize that. So I thought that was pretty good feedback. So more to come on that. What am I missing? Oh, and then the last piece is the big examples templates, and the migration to Gitpod is pretty much finished. So also play with that, because I mean, by pretty much finished, I mean totally finished. So yeah, definitely try it out and find holes in it on Friday if you want to. That's a good time to do it. We really need at this point lots of feedback. Oh, speaking of feedback, the last piece is adding metrics to Shell that we're working on this week. So yeah, so I'm all over the place. My notes are kind of scattered. Any questions or suggestions?
One suggestion, one question. Well, not necessarily related to DevX.
Sure.
So suggestion is maybe we should start considering a monorepo.
Yeah.
So it becomes quite challenging to keep everything in sync in terms of like not breaking. So right now the chain of stuff being broken that I see is happening is examples of the contracts being broken by changes in the like near SDK that being caused by near core or like changes in near shell. So sometimes, you know, 4 tools can play together to break something, and it's unclear where we need to have those tests that would be catching this. So I saw Parity actually having a monorepo now. I think for good reason. I saw them also not having this monorepo before. So we might investigate that also, because it might make our like releases easier, since we might be like releasing every tool simultaneously at the same time rather than having them all separately. But it's just like a suggestion, something we should start.
I think it's worse than current process. Like if we have monorepo, we're gonna break stuff more frequently.
Yeah, I was gonna say it might slow us down.
Well, right now we're fixing things in post factum after the break. The goal of monorepo was.
I agree that we need to have tests that span across multiple repos, but that doesn't require having a monorepo as a main way to manage development.
Okay, just throwing in this discussion so that we have it in our minds and can start talking about it somewhere.
I think
we can look into that.
I think like there's kind of 2 points here. One is that all of our examples, like if people are running them themselves, they would run a master node with an example, like node from master branch from an example. And given we made our master pretty much bleeding edge, that means they'll face like all kinds of epic issues, right? So, and our tooling may not actually be ready for master yet. Like our tooling, like I would not be expecting our tooling to be working with bleeding edge. That's kind of like it's not even that far off, right? That like bleeding edge of the database doesn't work with like, you know, some of the secondary tooling. So like this is actually, I mean, why originally I didn't want master to be a bleeding edge, because, you know, people check it out, they start running examples and everything fails. So we should figure out, like, one option is like version compatibility on the, like the, you know, we've been trying to establish somewhere, but like where examples actually would like tell you that, hey, you're running on like a newer version of your core or something like this.
Quick note on that. Mike is actually working on a POC for something that could grow into that, basically like magically checking versions of near shell and looking at dependency. Well, eventually looking at dependencies and saying, okay, use this one or not that one. That's like easily in the realm of possibilities. The other piece of this is that people, at least, huh? Well, just one second, Vlad. Let me just finish this thought. Which is that people don't care if they're actually checking out master and then doing stuff with it, right? They care that when they run something, it actually works. Kind of like when I first installed Rust, I didn't know where it was pulling from. I didn't know what was happening. I just wanted it to work immediately, right? If someone is nuanced enough to go and like, oh, sorry, my video cut out for a second. If someone's nuanced enough to go and look at like which branch is doing what and actually look at which issues are on what branch, then I think they're like capable of figuring out when the most recent issues were pushed to it and kind of figuring out that, well, maybe if shell was pushed a week ago and then core was pushed today, these are not going to be compatible, right? So the short answer is my response would be to create a really good flow where you're advocating one branch as the examples branch, and that can be nightly, that's fine, as long as everything is on the level with that one branch and the source of truth would be core, then you have scripts that pull from it or you have commands that pull from it that you can show people. That's my suggestion.
So my point is that people do git checkout near core, cargo, you know, -pt near D now, run near D, and then run examples, and that doesn't work because examples are not updated. All of our CI, etc., works after bleeding edge is pushed, right? Like we cannot stop like near core development for all those examples to update. Like we should not push into beta net. We should definitely not push in stable without all of our upstream working. But we cannot like stop, you know, run it on every commit. So our master, our bleeding edge, whatever the branch it is, will be broken with all of the examples and tooling, kind of by definition. And
but
like,
why are you?
I mean, and like here, comes in that like we should not be like
Why it
breaking
cannot be
anything.
backwards compatible?
That's always a good suggestion, but like, you know, like for example, we broke it because we broke it and it should be rolled back, right? Somebody like messed up and broke it and we should roll back, right? That's a totally normal situation. Like we will learn about it when we run CI and when we run nightly and when we run CI for all the examples. That's when we learn it and we go and we roll it back. But like at the moment when that got pushed, there's examples that are broken. Like, I mean, that is kind of situation which like I've got questions in, you know, different channels where people like, I run an example and it doesn't work.
In my
Like,
opinion,
well,
we
yeah,
should
sure.
solve this problem with near up. So we currently have a tool to set up the node, and we should have a local setup there. And like, don't ask people to pull the master Git repo at all. Like it should be repositories for developers. It's not for those who want to play with examples, right?
So I agree
Well,
with
some
you.
people like to download sources
Yeah.
and everything.
Exactly. So like I totally agree with you. Examples should in the beginning say run near up local net. That's like should like if you want local or run it as testnet. Like that's for sure should be the kind of examples flow. But yeah, people do run like I don't think actually we have an in examples way saying check out near core, right? People just do it because that's kind of how you do it. Like if you know hacking on some random blockchain, that's kind of how you would do it.
Well, it is expected that master can be ahead of like the stable version. So in open source, it's all over the places, and we just need to clarify. Have just a reminder in the documentation.
I agree with Vlad. We should pull like external developers. So maybe this is something DevX to look into to make sure people actually. Do people have expectations of master working? Because I don't have like, these expectations when I use open source tools. Like I never try to pull master and be like, oh, it's not going to work because they're too complex.
It depends on where they're coming from, right? Like if they're like Web 2 developers who work with and like front end, for instance, most master branches work because they're from like really big companies that just maintain the master branch with like 100 people. But if anyone from blockchain, I don't think they expect anything to work. But yeah, it's a good point. We'll look more into it. And then the last piece for me is like this idea of like get checkout master and try to run it. I haven't seen that behavior. I haven't seen that people care that much about that behavior. Validators care about that behavior. But also if you tell them what branch to do, they'll do it. Like I've never had someone go, oh, I really want to use master. It's not a preference as much as a communication thing and then an instructions thing, in my opinion.
That statement is technically false, right? Because this Lazarus guy, or whatever his nickname was on GitHub, he was very adamant about
that.
Definitely.
That's true. I think that guy was an outlier from other.
One person is not the statistics.
Pieces, other behavior would suggest that he's an outlier. If we're going to follow his thing, then all of our accounts need to be able to be deleted and then created new somewhere else as well.
There's one thing which I want to add is like, I think there is a difference why, like, I mean, like in general, most of the repositories on GitHub are working for master, like master version of the repositories are working because it's their dependencies are like clearly set. And for example, in our case, we have the integration repository is near core because it goes forward. It's like it updates and then other repositories should follow this update. This why this is a problem that we have this near core which goes forward. I mean, so that's why it must be an integration point of everything, I think.
Real quick process point here. We got 5 minutes left, guys. Just beware.
Damon, you also wanted to say something in the beginning, I remember, about this whole monorepo.
I was just saying that the whole monorepo idea is a good idea because it forces us to integrate in general, right? Forces all the testing to be in one spot. So I'm inclined to do that. that said, I'm also aware of Vlaud's concerns, right? So I don't know. I'm kind of torn on this piece, right? I really like the fact that Nearcore is all kind of one place, and we can all put all the things that need to be integrated there. So I don't know. It just depends on what the true definition of a monorepo is in this particular case, and how we can put things in and get integrated testing in so it's adequate. Right now, I'm really concerned more about our culture of test and being able to test across repos and cross projects. To be honest, that type of integration is essential, and right now I think we're pretty lacking in that area.
Yeah, I think like testing is important. The reasons against monorepo, the kind of somewhat maybe remote right now, but it is important, is that we actually want other people to develop tooling around Nearcore, and we also want other clients, not just Nearcore, to exist for Near protocol. And we cannot, like, unless we require everybody in the world to develop in one repo going forward, like who is connected to Near protocol in any way, like we cannot realize it, like, you know, if it works for us, it will not work for like everybody else, right? So like we should establish a process that works for everyone versus, you know, something that works for us but doesn't work for anyone else. And then the second reason is like we do like the speed of development for Near shell should not depend on how fast like we have release in stable for Nearcore. Like going forward, right, you know, releases in Nearcore will be like, you know, very paced, let's just say. So, and like, you know, I hope like Near shell and Near lib and all the other tooling will actually continue developing and like bringing more features and value to developers. So like unless, you know, we also have like different schedules of releasing inside one monorepo, that would make it like extremely tied together, which is very suboptimal as well. So like I think like we should just instead invest in tooling and testing and some communication where like we expect master not to work. Like that's my point. Like we like just the fact is like if you're pushing code, it will probably not work in master. Like we need to roll it back, but we'll roll it back after. Like people should not be using master with other stuff. Anyway.
Okay, one real quick point, Ilya, and I know we only got 2 minutes left here, so I'm gonna just sort of, this is probably a little too late, but a couple of high-level goals that have been proposed for engineering is we want to see an increase in number of validators on testnet, and we want to see a number of weeks without failures and critical issues found. I know, Ilya, you want to pop this news to other people and on your own terms, but I think this is really important to talk about here in the last couple of minutes. We're starting to see validators join this meeting because this is a public meeting, right? And this is really great, and I want to see more of this. I'd like to see and hear feedback from our validators and our overall community. So if there are people here, this is an opportunity to speak up and use this meeting, and also ask questions on how you can use your influence inside of a GitHub and other places. So I really wanted to see this to be a community meeting. So please do speak up, and I'm glad to see other people here. That said, is there anything else that anybody else wants to talk about in this last 60 seconds before we have to go to the all hands? And now it's down to about 45 seconds.
I can add that also, like one thing that's, I think that, for example, we have why it's so important, because I mean, that's, for example, Nearcore, we are updating the network, and then all the tools should be updated synchronously with it. And that means that it's, we can't, the tools which are works with not the latest Nearcore are just like, which are not, which can't work with the latest Nearcore are just useless. That means that so like if Nearcore would be just a library, it will be not a problem. But it's something which is actually something which updates everything, and that's why we have this problem, I think.
Yeah. It's a good point. Good point, Alexei. Okay, guys, we got to wrap it up. We've got all hands right now. Are there any one last quick meeting questions or any things that need to be asserted before we drop off? All right. Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you shortly. Cheers. Bye.
Cool. Thanks.
Bye.